Let's start off with the Commons module. This is the expanded version of the Commons module. There is also a compactified version of it that you'll see towards the end. But for now, we're going to use the expanded because it exposes these nodes rather than having them all stacked on top of each other for space saving. So, in the upper left-hand corner here, we have these gray nodes. These gray nodes contain constant names for the different image types that you can export by default with the system. You get unprocessed, processed, line art, shadow, highlight, normal map, depth map, and color palette. And those all get sent out to the saver module in order to help build your file name. Speaking of your file name, we're going to go over to this section here. These orange nodes, within the application in general, these orange nodes typically represent user input, somewhere where you should or could put some kind of a value in order to achieve some result. In this case, we're defining the output path, and we're also defining the project name. So Aegis Flow is just its default value, right? And Shima is the default project name. But you're going to want to change this, right? So let's pretend, right? We're working on a movie called Star Wars 10. Project is called, and then let's see, the fans complain, right? Because that is what will happen. Let's move our prompt queuer out to the side here so that we don't have to look at it. And then, I don't know, we're working on a character for the movie. Let's call him Darth Juggalo. I think there's 2 G's in a properly spelled Juggalo. There we go. So now we have ourselves a folder path, right? And a project name. And these will combine with our previously seen nodes over here to form your folder and file name structure. So in this example, let's pretend that we were outputting line art, right, of Darth Juggalo. We might then see in our output folder within ComfyUI a folder called Star Wars 10 Fans Complain, right? And then a slash, right? That's the main folder. And then Darth Juggalo and a date, because this is, we're working on Darth Juggalo on this specific date, slash Darth Juggalo underscore seed number underscore line art, and then possibly a 6-digit bit.ly style extension that you can add optionally. I'll show you that here with Rando Calrissian, which is over here. If you turn this on, what it's going to do is it is going to use this table here to generate an alphanumeric code that gets sent to the end of your file name. And this allows you to create images that have the same seed, the same output type, the same name, but have a unique identifier so that you're not overwriting your file each time. By default, and we'll go more into this in the saver, but by default, the system is set to overwrite. So if you use the same seed with mildly different settings, it will overwrite your previous attempt, right? And so as you get close to the final desired end product, you might be making very minor adjustments, of config or whatever, CFG or other values. And you might want to be keeping certain aspects of each one of those images for later compositing, right? That's just an example of why you might want to do this, right? So in the center here, we have all of these common sends, basically. Anywhere in Shima where you see these black zipped up nodes or collapsed nodes, these are almost always going to be a send node. They use Chris Gorringe's use everywhere nodes to pipe different values out to different parts of the system, right? And that way you don't have to wire them up yourself, right? Good example might be here, date and time send, right? it will send anywhere matching this group regex, right? Meaning anything with the word send1 in its name, regardless of whether it's capital S or not, right? And the input, meaning, let me find an input for you. Like, these are inputs, things on the left-hand side. Most people probably know that, but if you're really new, you might not have all the terminology down. So this will send out to any input called date time on any node title, meaning any kind of node, anything that has any title at all, within this group, right? Structure, groups that contain this name, right? By default, within Shima, all of our nodes go to send1, and this is just an arbitrarily chosen group name or a group identifier, but it could be anything that you wanted, really. You could make your own templates that sent to something else, right? And theoretically, although I don't know many instances where you'd want to do it, you could wire up multiple commons modules and have them going to different group regexes. But it's a little overboard and, quite frankly, probably unnecessary, right? So with this send, right, we can then define, it gets its value up here from this date time, and we could change it to, something that match the locally preferred time structure, or maybe the time structure that your company prefers, right? Technically, it could export any value, but, obviously by default, this makes a lot of sense to have date and time for your folders. So over here, we have the common seed export. Right now, it's set to randomize each time, but we could also set it to a fixed value that we know that we enjoy, that we like. And then we have a common latent size, and here you would select on your short side, either 512 for Stable Diffusion 1.5 and SDXL 1024, right? That will not always be used, but this is a default value so that things don't error out if you don't have another latent size provided, right? Down in the left-hand corner, we have our terminal log, right? And our terminal log can be used to, well, show the terminal, which normally you would have to look at in another window like so. But now, if we queue up a prompt, if we queue up a prompt and we turn on logging, we'll actually get our iteration, So that is the terminal window. And then lastly, we're going to talk about this. This is the mute and unmute groups to control processing area. Basically what this does is every time you add a new templated group, or really any group, even if it's not a template, it will show up in this list. And when you click yes or no, it will turn on or turn off that entire group of nodes. And so this might be used to control your execution. Let's say you're seeking out the perfect image, right? And you finally found the perfect image, and you want to now send it through an iterative upscaler, right? And so let's do that. Let's go ahead and queue a prompt and pretend like we found the perfect image. It's going to generate one, and now it's going to actually start going through the iterative upscaler section, which I have turned on over here. And voila, it is actually already complete. And we can see that it made some modifications, to the hair, a little bit to the clothing as well. This is some random, just black cruft. Here it's a little more repetitive. Looks like maybe it's flowers, that sort of thing. So that is effectively the commons explained. all the components of it explained. So let's go ahead though and remove, well, turn off our logging, and we're going to go ahead and remove the group with nodes. This is a feature of Shima also, or the Aegis Flow utility nodes, as are all of these different colors that you're seeing. Because if you have a base Comfy installation, you probably are wondering how the hell we're getting these colors. We have extended the light graph so that we can have a better option for color choices. So let's remove the group with nodes, and we will go in and place instead a compact version of it. And this has all the exact same stuff, just arranged differently and stacked differently so that it's it's not as easy to work on, right? But it is much easier to have on display, right? There's just not as much space taken up, because typically you don't really need all of these things. You're not going to really go in and mess with these, or you probably shouldn't. All you need is to know, whether or not you want to use the random ID, whether or not, what folder path to use, what project name to use, what group X, regex you're sending, and actually if you're using base templates, you won't even need to mess with this. And then maybe seed settings, latent settings, that kind of stuff. But past that, it's exactly the same. So that is the module in a nutshell. And let's move on in our next tutorial to the sampler and the loader.